Hi, welcome to Mr. Otter's studio. Today I am actually redoing an older tutorial that I had. This is the first thing I do with most of my watercolor classes. We make a color wheel. And the reason we do it is I want them and I want you to get familiar with mixing watercolors and also learning how to use your watercolors. I've had a lot of people ask about color mixing. This is how to mix the colors of the rainbow using 3 colors. So those 3 colors some people refer to as the primary colors. And those colors are red, yellow, and blue. So with those 3 colors, we can make all of the colors of the rainbow. And so now you get a little quiz before we start. If you have red, yellow, and blue, how would you make the color green? If you guessed blue and yellow, you are right. How would you make the color orange? Yellow and red. And how would you make the color violet? If you guessed blue and red, you are correct. So with just these 3 colors, now we have 6 colors. And I'm going to show you today how to make 12 colors using them. These are the supplies that you need. You need watercolors. I'm just using a simple 8-color set. You need watercolor paper, water, a paintbrush. I'm just using 1 paintbrush for this tutorial. So this is a number 6 or 10 round. You just need 1 round brush to paint this whole thing in. You need a pencil and an eraser to draw the color wheel, a paper towel, and then these next supplies are optional. If you want a circular color wheel, which a lot of people like to use because it shows the relationships between the colors a little bit more simply, grab a plate or something round just to trace a circle. Of course, your color wheel does not have to be round and it does not have to be perfect. You can use a ruler if you want your color wheel to be divided equally into 12 parts. And that's it. So let's get started. This is a great tutorial for beginners. Here is an easy way to divide your circle into 12 parts. Trace the circle onto your paper. So to divide this into 12, you can just divide it into 4 pie slices and then divide each one of those into 3, and that will give you 12. If you want them to be a little bit more precise, you can use a ruler, and you can watch this tutorial right here to learn how to do that. This is another way to divide it into 4 evenly spaced squares. This won't be as precise as using a ruler, but it will look a little bit more precise than just freehanding it. So you want to draw an X in the middle. Just try to keep these equal distances apart. And then in each of these spaces, we're actually going to divide this into 4. So think of dividing like this into 2 and this part into 2 with a line. So you kind of just find the middle of it. And then we're going to divide each one of these lines into 2. So I'm just going to split it in half horizontally and split this in half horizontally. And anywhere these lines touch the edge of your circle, that is where you want to bring a line back into the center. And you can use your ruler for this part. So this line should continue straight through and end here. So I try to make these lines together. So it's giving us these 2 pie slices. Then we're going to do the same thing right here. Bring it to this point over here. Try to go straight through the center of your circle. And then do the same thing with these ones. Divide them into 3 using that same technique. And if it's hard for you to figure out which lines to bring together, just wherever it hits the edge of the circle, connect that to the center. And it should come close to one of these other lines where that hits the edge of your circle. And then you know you need to draw your line through to create that pie slice. So you can draw it 3 ways. However you get those 12 pie slices on there really is not the important thing. All right, once you have your circle divided into 12, let's go ahead and label where the colors will be. Labeling them first is going to spare you a lot of trouble later. The first colors we're going to label are the primary colors. Those are red, yellow, and blue. So red, yellow, and blue should be evenly spaced on this. To make them evenly spaced, you'll write down your color, and I just like to write it around the edge of my color wheel to use as a reference. So if I place red up here, then I know I have 3 empty pie slices, and then this should be yellow. And then blue is our last primary color. Skip 3, 1, 2, 3. Blue should go here. If you want to double check, just count 3 spaces and make sure red is right there, which it is. So now blue. Now we're going to write in our secondary colors, which are in the middle of our primary colors. So when we mix red and yellow, we get orange. So go ahead and write orange. You can just write 1 letter. You don't need to write the whole thing. This is for your reference. Do whatever is going to work for you in the future. Red and blue make violet. So skip 1, and in the center. Yellow and blue make green. So green is going to be in this pie slice right here. Now we're going to write the tertiary colors. Typically how you say colors, they start with the primary color first. So you wouldn't say orange, red, you would say red, orange. So I'm just going to write R-O for red, orange. In between orange and yellow, yellow, orange. In between yellow and green, YG, green and blue, blue, green, in between blue and violet, blue, violet, in between violet and red, red, violet. And that's it. Let's get ready to paint. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to set my paints up on the right side of my paper. If you're left-handed, set everything up on the left side of your paper. You need paints, water, a paper towel, and a paintbrush. If it's hard for you to paint, feel free to move your color wheel around. If it's easier for you to paint a triangle in this direction, I'm just going to keep mine in the same spot. Instead of using the paint just straight from here and painting our yellow, we're actually going to mix up a puddle of yellow in our tray. If you don't have one of these trays, you can use a white plate. These work great for mixing watercolors. And the reason we want to mix it up is because number one, we're going to be adding colors to this puddle to mix in these other triangle slices and these other colors, but also we want to have enough mixed up to cover in this area. So we are going to paint yellow on the edge of this slice, and then as we move into the center, we're going to add water to our paintbrush to make it go a little bit lighter, and that's called a gradated wash, where you go from dark to light. It's really easy to do, and it can create a lot of depth in your paintings, so it's a really good technique to know. So with the yellow, make sure you're in the right pie slice, paint around the outside, avoid scrubbing your paper going back and forth. I'm adding a little bit of water on my paintbrush, blotting it off a little bit and coming right over the top of that color, doing the same thing but taking a lot of color off my brush and then overlapping it and going straight into the center. So to make a yellow orange instead of an orange, you don't add as much red. So grab a little red on your paintbrush, drop it in your puddle, and if it looks too orange, add more yellow. You want like a nice golden, almost a golden color. You don't want your colors to jump. And we're going to do the same thing where we're painting some of it in, blotting off our brush, coming over the top of it as we move towards the center, blotting it off 2 times to get into the middle and to make it a little bit lighter. All right, now let's go ahead and add enough red to make this a nice orange. If it looks too red-orange, add more yellow. If it looks too yellow, add a little bit more red. You can also use a test piece of paper to test out your colors and just to see. Sometimes it looks a little different in the tray than when you paint it. Start on the outside of that pie slice. You can leave these little white roads, I guess, in between the colors if you don't want them to mix. I kind of like when the colors move into each other a little bit. If you don't want them to, just leave a little bit of dry paper in between. So to get it lighter, I'm just rinsing my brush off and blotting it on my paper towel. So now let's make a red orange. So we're just gonna add a little bit more red. And if it gets too light because we're adding a little bit of water, just add more yellow to make it a little bit more saturated. So go ahead and just start painting in the edge of that pie slice, moving towards the center. And as we move towards the center, you'll notice that I'm overlapping my brush strokes. And that's just going to help me create a continual wash instead of more of a striped feeling. We mix up some red in your tray with some water and do the same thing. If we add too much water, what color will it look like? Pink. Paint in the outer edge, and as we move in, we're just blotting off our brush, and I am overlapping, but I'm not scrubbing my paper. All right, now moving next to this one, we have red violet. So to make red violet, I'm just going to add a little bit of blue. Do the same thing. We're going to start on the edge, and as we move in, add a little bit of water. Now we are to violet. To make this more of a violet instead of a red violet, we're going to add more blue. And go ahead and paint that one in. So this is a good tip. If you don't want your colors to bleed, don't put 2 wet colors next to each other. The yellow-orange is bleeding a little bit into the yellow because there were 2 wet colors next to each other. To avoid that over here, I left white in between. You might like how it looks when they bleed into each other, so you can keep it. All right, now blue-violet. Add even more blue to your puddle. And again, if your puddle gets too light because we're using water, just add a little bit more of the primary color and it will be more saturated. All right, once you get your blue-violet mixed up, go ahead and paint that in using a gradated wash. And you don't have to use a gradated wash. You could keep it same color all of the way. All right, now blue. Go ahead and mix up your blue. Make a puddle in your tray, grab some of the blue and drop it in. One reason I like glass plates more than a tray is the black watercolor will stain these trays, and so it's kind of hard to see the color that you're mixing on top. But if you're using a glass plate, that won't happen. All right, once you have your blue mixed up, let's go ahead and paint in that slice. All right, now let's move into blue-green. So to make a blue-green, we're just gonna add a little bit of yellow to our blue and paint the blue-green slice in. Then to make the green, you're just going to add more yellow. Once you get that mixed up, test it out, make sure it's the color that you like, and then go ahead and paint that slice in. And then the last color is a yellow-green. And since this is so bright over here, I want to make sure I use enough yellow so that this doesn't just jump off the paper and overshadow all of the other colors. And then go ahead and paint your last slice in, and you are finished. So now you can use this as a reference when you're painting, not only to figure out how to mix certain colors. Also, I like to use this to reference different color combinations. So if I'm trying to dull a yellow and I want it to look a little bit more gray or a little bit darker, I can use its complementary color that's across from it on the color wheel. These also make a really nice gray color. So red and green make a nice gray, blue and orange are awesome. You might want to stick to colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. Those are analogous colors. But I hope you learned some techniques today, how to mix colors, also how to paint, how to create a gradated wash. I hope you enjoyed painting with me today and learned a little bit more about watercolors. Thank you so much for watching Mr. Otter's Studio. Have a wonderful day.